All right, all right. We've got Amy Pease here live with us to talk about 10 signs you may be in a manipulative or abusive relationship. And I have been thinking about relationships a lot lately. Actually, I'm watching two kids that aren't mine. They've been hanging out in my house lately, and it's just a totally different dynamic. And everybody's got, their drama and trauma is different than mine. And so it's just a different dynamic. And I've been thinking a lot about this and just how much this is prevalent in our society and in our lives and our relationships, because we're all in pain and then we're causing each other pain. So this is absolutely a really important conversation. So welcome to the stage, Amy.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to actually talk about this topic. Oddly enough, it's a pretty heavy topic, but it's definitely a discussion that we need to have and keep pushing out there for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, again, one of those things that gets pushed down, it gets pushed out. It's something that gets pushed under the table that people aren't always willing to open up about and be vulnerable about. We're not willing to talk about. So how did you get into this conversation? What made you brave enough to get out there and start talking about this and helping people with it?
So what kind of got me into this, it's actually been a really long journey. So I've been going through, healing after about almost 20 years ago is when my whole situation came to a head. And I ended up leaving my situation that I was in. And after that, what I wasn't prepared for, so while I was in that situation, what I kept doing was daydreaming about how wonderful my life was going to be once I left, and that's where a lot of people who are in these abusive relationships kind of think, once I'm free, life is going to be great. The world is going to be wonderful. And, nothing's going to stop me. But once you get out of there, you're not ready or you don't realize what comes next is the depression and the anxiety and the fear. And so that hit me really hard after leaving. And I had to do something about it because I had a young son who had autism. So I had a lot of responsibility on my plate, and I just couldn't live in this depressed state. And so I spent a lot of time researching about abuse, about dark psychology, mental abuse, toxic personalities, which led me down a very strange path of ancient warfare tactics, which actually tie into everything really well, surprisingly. And so, just through researching everything, I decided I was able to pick myself up. And then I started to notice how many other people were just suffering in this kind of state, maybe didn't have access to mental health services, couldn't afford it, it wasn't available to them, didn't have the insurance, or they just didn't want to go through, some kind of a healthcare system thing. And I realized I could put together everything that I've learned and I've taught myself over the years and how to bring yourself back out of that depressed state. And it's been about 5 years in the making. I was managing restaurants and bars and then left that to help my husband with his auto body shop. We had a pretty bad health scare with him. And so we sold our body shops. And it was a sign to me that now's the time to, put this out there and help as many people as I can with everything. And so I've started compiling everything. It's been about a year of putting it all together. And now it's finally all available in here. So it's been a long road, but yeah,
that's fantastic though. And, let's go back to what you said whenever you get out of the relationship, because I feel like this is true, not just in relationships, but with life, right? Oh, once we move, once we get this new house, once I get into this next level of education or this next job or this next income level, then everything's going to be roses and daisies. Everything will be great. But what is it, do you think, about getting out of it that really causes you to, is it a higher state of depression and anxiety after or before? Or can you kind of explain what's the difference there? Why do you think?
Yeah, so the biggest reason especially for those that have gone through an abusive relationship, is the fact that the abuser has rewired your brain to make you think that you're not incompetent, you're not worthy, you are not good for anything. And what we don't realize is how hardwired that gets into our brain, and the work that we have to do with ourselves afterwards to just readjust all of that. And you absolutely can do that, but it does take a lot of work. We don't realize that's there until we leave, and we just completely fall apart. We get the flashbacks of what happened, and we don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. So you're still living in the abuse in your head, and it's still happening. And what really needs to happen is doing that deep dive shadow work, addressing the feelings that you have around all of this, and even outside of an abusive relationship. You talked about just, you think you're going to move and, life's all of a sudden going to get better, or you go through college and, oh, I have my degree and life's going to be cool, and it just doesn't work out. And we just don't have the tools or know how to, kind of readjust ourselves when things don't work out our way, the way that we want them to. And that goes back to, we were never taught any of that really when we were growing up or through school. Most of the time our parents didn't know how to deal with that. They only knew how to just, put their boots on and keep going, and, just mask the pain and put that smile on. And because I got shit to do, that's kind of the mentality that everybody has.
Back to work. Yeah. I was just having those same thoughts this morning. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's like, "What's been coming up for you lately?" And I was like, "All that crap, right? Like,
right.
Work, suck it up, you grow up, get going, And I was like, so yeah, that stuff is real. And so for you, you mentioned shadow work, but what? Mm-hmm. Okay, and I said we were talking about the 10 signs also. So I want to get to the how to and tell us about the shadow work and the how, but I guess we should probably pause here for a second. Can you give us, we probably don't have time to go through all 10 signs of abuse, but for some people, they know there's that reality that you're like, oh, okay, I know that I'm in this. But I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like that frog in the boiling water situation where they say, oh, if you throw the frog into the boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you just throw it in the cold water and then you slowly turn up the heat, it'll, stay in there and boil itself to death. Right. So what are some of tell me, how many people do you kind of connect with? How do they really, okay, I have too many questions coming out.
You're good. Really,
I want to know, tell us what some of the signs are and why, how do people typically wake up? Do you feel like?
How do they wake up and realize they need the help?
Or wake up and just realize that this is happening to them?
Yeah, usually they already know, but they don't want to come to terms with the fact that they fell for this for many reasons. Because one, they feel like they're going to look like they are stupid because they fell for the lies and the manipulation. So they don't want to bring it to light. Two, they don't feel like they are worthy of anything better. I'm not going to be able to have anything better in my life. And that goes just way back to self-confidence issues, right. And so there's so many reasons why we don't notice in the meantime, but you do get to that point where you start having those feelings. And we were just having this discussion in my course the other day. It's that connection to your soul and your spirit and that gut instinct, and you do have that. And that's usually what ends up speaking to you, and letting you know that something is not right. Your gut instinct is not going to lead you astray. It's not. But what we end up doing is overriding that with our brains or with our emotions, and they're very different. Yeah. Oh, because, well, and then, our abusers as well, they have their times where they're super sweet. And so it puts you in this constant cycle of questioning what your gut instinct is telling you. And that's just part of the brainwashing. That's part of the conditioning that they put you through. And you go back and forth between, and you could do this for decades, back and forth between they're abusive, they're not abusive, they're abusive, they're not abusive. And you're just confused. And, that's why I wrote the guide From Confusion to Clarity. Like, no, these are the absolute signs. And if it keeps coming up, you have a problem. on your hands. You know, this person is abusive to you. And
well, and I think it's, what do you think about that? We didn't answer the okay, but what do you think about I'm wondering too how much movies and media and stuff has a role in that, where we kind of are sold from very early on, there's good guys and there's bad guys. And it's just like, is this person a good guy or a bad guy? Well, then they're doing bad things, but then they're doing good things. So are they a good guy? Are they a bad guy? And I think that's what you pointed to there too, is okay, well, I can see the good in them. I can see their potential. They're really kind. I can see the good in them. You know, I can see that they are good people. And then they're also doing these bad things to me. So I think there's a point to be made there too, that they don't have to be bad people for you to leave, for you to need to leave.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, you don't need to be in a relationship with, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer to, you know, to pack up and go. You know, I mean, these people can be, you know, and sometimes, you know, they have their own issues from, you know, their childhood. They were abused one way or another, and they have their own issues that they haven't dealt with, and it comes out, you know, in an abusive way to you, and they don't even know that they're doing it sometimes. And so we want to get into this state of, I can help them, I can fix them, when the reality is you can't help them, you can't fix them. You know, they need to get some serious, you know, treatment and intervention. And if they're not willing to recognize that in themselves, or willing to take those steps in themselves, they're not going to change. And it doesn't matter how much you love them, how much you want them to be around, and how much you want them to get better. Until they want to do it for themselves, it's never going to happen. And so oftentimes it's just best to remove ourselves and let them go through that. And hopefully they wake up and say, okay, I need help. And then they go through the process. Now, that's not saying they, you know, say, okay, I need help, and then they get into therapy, and as soon as you take them back, they quit. You know, they've got to be able to prove that they are, you know, trying to help themselves along the way, and actually trying to correct it. And it's pretty rare that they actually go through that. They're out there though.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us just like two or three of these signs that are in. You said confusion to clarity. I have the link here if anybody wants to download and get the full 10 signs that you may be in a manipulative and abusive relationship. But what are just a few of those?
So one is playing the victim. So they will act as though they are the ones being wronged or manipulated themselves. So that's where they're going to turn things back on you when you try to point out maybe some abusive patterns to them. And that one's not talked about enough, I don't think. And that's, you know, it's a big one, you know. So if you're going, you know, you always treat me this way, and they go, oh, well, I only do that because you do this to me. And so it's just this back and forth blame thing. They can't accept any responsibility for the way that they treat you, or the things that they do, or any responsibility for the way their life has turned out. So maybe, you know, they're not getting the promotions in their career, so they blame you for it, you know. So it's playing the victim, and you're always the aggressor in their life, or you're always the one perpetuating some sort of, you know, nonsense on them to keep them down in their lives. Yeah. So that's a big one, and it can be subtle. Sometimes we don't notice that one too. Another one, and this is one that I was stuck in, was the creating dependency. So my situation was around my adopted family. So I have severed ties with my adopted family. Now, I'm very grateful that they adopted me and had a pretty good childhood. You know, it was later in life that some things kind of came up. But it's, you know, creating a dependency in a way that, you know, they've isolated you from friends, or even other family members, and taking complete control of your time. So you can only work certain hours, or, you know, I am going to tell you exactly what you're going to do with your time, and you're going to spend every minute with me, kind of a thing. They take complete control of your finances. And so they make it so that you're very dependent upon them. And this can be flipped the other way, where they make themselves completely dependent upon you. And now it becomes, you know, I'd be lost without you. Who else will care for, in my who else is going to care for your poor sick mother? That was, one that was on me. And so it can go both ways, really it can. And that
that one's interesting because I haven't really heard people talk about that one as much, but absolutely, yeah, like what's going to happen to me if you leave? What's going to, I need you to, again, that's more of the victim that you're talking about before too. Yeah.
Yeah. And they, they want you to feel guilty about taking this step and leaving. So if the anger that they perpetuated before didn't work on you, well, now they're going to roll that back and they're going to play victim, and they're going to, play with your emotions, especially if they know that you tend to be a bit emotional, and you tend to have that caring nature about you. They're going to use it against you. It's a game. This whole thing is a game to them. And they sit there and they think and they plan out how they're going to approach you and how they're going to keep you under their control. So it is very much a game that you're playing in an abusive relationship.
Yes.
And then let's see, another one. I'm trying to pick out some good ones that maybe we don't talk about too much here. Constant criticism. So frequent, harsh criticism that undermines your self-esteem, making you feel inadequate kind of as a person in general. So, you can't do anything right. You're too stupid to understand, or you would be nothing without me. Again, just kind of whittling away at your confidence, and your kind of ability to be able to live without them.
Wash off if we're just talking about it, right? But I remember, a couple of years ago, I was in, it wasn't even, it was a work relationship, a potential partnership that I jumped into for just a couple months, a friendship partnership that I was going to help this person with something. And I remember, you mentioned that your body, like your instincts, your gut reactions, your body is going to react. It got to the point that it was so confusing. He was so good. It was so good. It was so confusing. It took me a while. Like I was coaching with somebody else at the time and she's like, you need to listen to what you just told me because it sounds like abuse. And when I listened to what I had told her, I was like, oh my goodness, this sounds terrible, because I was saying stuff like, oh, if I just did this, then they would like it. Or if I just did that, blah, blah. And then I remember being on a meeting with him and my body, literally, I was throwing up during the meeting. My body was so it so did not want to be there. I was literally running to the bathroom and throwing up because I didn't want to be there. And to me, I was like, wow, that is some strong body is talking to you, insane. So, okay. So once you've kind of understood, okay, this is going on.
Yep.
How do you know when to leave? And then how do you leave?
Well, typically, at least with me and a lot of other people that I've talked to, we realize it, but we don't act right away. And that has to do with, you're wrestling with the fact now that, okay, can I do this on my own? You're still fighting that, and you're going to get to that point of, pure disgust. And I am not doing this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And this is where, we teach in the course, why such strong emotions like anger and disgust are such powerful emotions to move you forward, instead of, pushing that down or, brushing it aside. You want to harness that anger and you want to harness that disgust, because when you're disgusted enough with your life and the way that things are going, you're going to have the determination and the passion to say, I have had enough. I'm out of here. And that's, a really powerful day when you decide enough is enough. That's the day that your entire life changes. And so you end up coming up with the strength to just do it. You start making your plan. And often we have to make a plan because we have zero access to finances. We've been cut off from family and from friends. And even if we do try to reach out to family and friends, chances are they're not going to pick up the phone or respond to us because they got so tired of listening to us complain about the abuse for so long and doing nothing about it. And often they've given us resources, or they say, hey, I will help you get away and blah, blah, blah. And then you just kind of always dismissed them or never did anything. And so they end up going away on their own. So chances are they're not going to come forward and help you. Maybe they will. But in my situation, my friends were done with me. They're like, we've been telling you, I don't know what to tell you now. And so I had to make the plan on my own, and I had to come up with a way to get some money. I had to come up with a way to get an apartment, and I had to do all this in secrecy without letting them know that, this was happening. I was the only breadwinner in the house. And so I was, tackling with, grappling with the idea, that how are they going to survive in the end? And so I had to get over that as well, because I was fighting those kind of emotions. But I ended up getting some services through the state. They got me into an apartment. They paid the first month's rent. They paid the security deposit. And we were able to break free and get out. And, the rest was kind of history. And so you've got to make that plan. You've got to take steps 1, 2, 3. And it's a tough time, because you're still living with the abuse. So you're still living with the abuser. And they're going to try everything they can, especially if they get tipped off that you're going to do this. And so they're going to try. They're going to try to keep you.
Right. Yes, which is kind of scary stuff. But okay, so you help people after they've come through this, and they've taken that big step. Well, I guess before we go there too, I love how you talked about anger, because I know this is part of your process too. Once they're out, is just turning that pain into something that they can use. And I think a lot of times we talk about anger is kind of looked down on, or we think of it as like a negative, bad emotion and frustration and anger. But I just love how you said it was the catalyst that moves them forward. And I remember hearing, I don't know if it's true or not. You know how sometimes you hear those analogies. But, I need to look it up. But the eagle, I heard that like the eagle in their nest, whenever they have their babies in their nest, they'll like peck at the babies and frustrate them and get them annoyed until they leave the nest, right? It's like that frustration that gets you out. So talk to us about that concept, your process in helping people. That's different. It's not therapy. What do you do for people that really speaking to this pain and transforming it? Can you talk to us a little bit more about your process?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, they're the most powerful emotions, especially when you're going through the abuse. And you are able to take that anger and that disgust that you have for your situation, and, really embrace that as a power tool for yourself, instead of looking down on the anger and taking it to a depressive state, taking your anger and taking it to a powerful state instead. But that requires, going through some steps beforehand as well. You kind of got to know your why am I doing this, and where you're going. And that's one of the things that we go through as well. Okay, what do you want to do with your life now? Okay, so we dream big, and we start to make baby steps on how to get there. So we start to make a roadmap of where you are now to where you want to be. And then we tap into, kind of what is your true why? Why do you want to do this? Most people, it's very superficial why. So we go very, very deep into the real why that maybe they didn't realize was deep down in there. And when they have that true why, and they have a destination that they want to go, okay, well now, we can light this whole thing on fire and use that anger and that passion to propel you to where you want to be. Okay, we already know what backwards looks like. We already know what depressed looks like. Okay, and so we can choose to sit in that, and we can choose to sit in the anger and the depression and the anxiety and the fear and the distrust, and we can sit in that and just, rot away in the suffering for the rest of our lives. Or we can figure out how to ignite the anger and the disgust. And that's going to take you so much further than just, oh, you know what? I think one day I'd like to do this. That would be kind of cool. But once you have that burning passion, desire in your gut, you can feel it. It's in your intuition. And that's what we really try to bring out in the sessions is that part of it, so that you can keep going and do what you want to do despite everything that's coming your way, because it's all going to come at you no matter what. Life is going to life you up and down. And so you just gotta know how to do that. And that's what we address in the course.
And you mentioned also shadow work
Mm-hmm.
as well. Can you explain that for some people? I know whenever the first time, several years ago, the first time I heard that, I was like, is it like ghosts or something? Like, I was so confused about what that actually meant. So can you explain it to anybody who doesn't know?
Yeah. So doing the shadow work is dealing with, those old emotions or old situations that we've gone through. Sometimes it has to do with generational traumas, or generational curses you hear about. It deals with really looking at past situations and dissecting them, reflecting on them, and interjecting your truth kind of into it. A lot of times it has to do with stuff that happened to us when we were younger. And so really looking at those situations and pulling the emotions kind of out of it, or looking at it from more of a logical standpoint and deciding, okay, well, this was my emotional response to it. And it's really just healing those kind of wounds through a lot of journaling, a lot of reflection. We do a lot of reflective exercises in this course as well. And then I provide a lot of resources so they can continue to do it. In the course, I don't like to, in the sessions, really have the clients go deep into the issues that they had to pull themselves away from, but I do give them the prompts to do this kind of on their own, and guide them, in a one-on-one kind of setting on how to, process the stuff that happened to us in the past. A lot of times we get the flashbacks from the past, or we get these negative feelings that come over us, or this depression that hits us out of nowhere. And most of the time it has to do with unresolved trauma from the past. And so doing that shadow work, and that's what it is, that shadow work from the past, those ghosts that kind of haunt us, even though we don't want to think about that kind of stuff anymore, or maybe we thought we forgot about all that kind of stuff. But it's just going back and reflecting on everything, and adding your, or looking at it through your eyes now, and continuing to do that as you get older too, because your perspective is going to change on things. If I look back at and do the shadow work on myself from when I was growing up, when I first started this journey at the age of, 25, I think, is when I first started doing all of this. It's a very different, I guess, lens than me looking at it now at the age of 45. I'm at the same age that my mother was, when this all happened. And so I can see some things very differently, and I can forgive some of the things because I understand on a different level than I was able to at the age of 25, just because the life experience wasn't there. And so it's just keep going back, even though we don't want to keep thinking about these things, but periodically keep going back and reflecting on it. And you're going to get a new perspective the more you do it. And the more you do that, the more at peace you're going to be with the things that happened to you in the past. And so that's what the shadow work is. And it's an important thing to do. But you got to be ready for it, because it's painful. It can be, and have the right resources and have the right, people around to kind of help you through it, because it's going to get hard.
Yeah. And I know you said whenever we were chatting before we hopped on about your course and people going through your course, you were talking about, one of the big comments that you get though is that you're not making me relive everything at the same time. So speak to that a little bit. Like, how do you do the shadow work without feeling like you're going to have to?
So, I don't get into that stuff with the clients unless they want to. So it's nothing that I'm going to have them, bring out and relive in the course if they don't want to go there. I give them the tools and I give them the resources to do that on their own. And it should be a personal thing that they do. I'm not going to sit there and probe questions about their past. If they want to offer up that information on their own, very cool. If they want to keep it very generic and hey, I was abused by my husband and this is what he did, You know, we could do that too, instead of going into the specific situations and what were you doing, you know, how did you feel about it, who was around, and relive that whole experience in front of strangers. You know, we don't make them do that necessarily, and they can choose to do that on their own, and I encourage them to do that on their own through, you know, journaling and a bunch of other activities that I give them. But I don't put them on the spot and force them to relive this stuff. It's something that they've got to bring themselves to when they're ready to do that part of it. And I know that once they do the shadow work, a lot of the course is going to really sink in to them. And so I give them a lot of tools to do it. And I give them a lot of inspiration and motivation and a lot of resources to do it, so they can do it in a way that's, you know, productive, and through a lens that maybe they didn't have before. But yeah, I don't put them on the spot. I don't force them to relive this stuff. But I do encourage them to do the shadow work on their own. Or they can do it in a one-on-one session with me if they want to, but I'm never going to push somebody to relive any kind of traumas.
Well, and it's kind of whenever you're ready for it. Like you're saying, you're not going to get it out anyway. And it's different than therapy in the sense that, like, I've done some of that work before where, yeah, you just go back and you look at what was there, like, what was my point of view? What was I feeling? What was their what were they feeling? And I remember it being, so helpful. I was doing it with my dad whenever, you know, and I was just realizing, oh, you know, he was a young dad. He just had started a business. He has, you know, all this, like, wow, he was really stressed out at that time. Like I could see and understand a little bit more about what happened during that time. And just, you know, anyways, it would just give me a greater appreciation for him. And, like, of course, it wasn't about me at all. It was totally about them. So
and that's where those healing those wounds kind of comes from, you know, being able to do that kind of stuff.
Yes, and kind of like take yourself out of it. So tell us a teeny bit more about your course and about how people can work with you if they're having this issue, if they're feeling aligned with you and saying, yes, would like this kind of support. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so the course is called Finding Strength After Toxicity, and it goes through or into, it's a foundational course, and it gives you the foundation that you need to go on and continue a healing journey for the rest of you. So healing journey is going to take you a very long time. Mine took me 20 years, and you know what? There's still parts that I'm working on, which is perfectly okay. You know, you don't have to go into this stuff and you know, in 5 days or 10 days be completely healed. And if you've got somebody telling you they can do that for you, I'm sorry, they're full of crap. It doesn't work that way. They're just going to take your money. But this course, we give you the foundation that you need to go on that healing journey, so you can find the strength within and the courage within you to continue and just keep moving forward. We teach you how to get back on course when you get off course, because you will. It's going to happen. Life is going to come your way, and you're going to decide to push all this aside for one reason or another, or the healing is just going to get too intense and you need a break from it, and that's okay too. But being able to come back to it and how to come back to it is super important if you want to be able to get past all of this and use your anger and your past as a catalyst to push you forward. And so that's what we teach in this course. And it's actually part one of a series that I've got that's going to be coming out. The second part is going to be available this summer, and it's called Wounded to Warrior. And it is finding your passion from your pain. And it does go through an actual healing journey, the one that I went on, and it does teach you how to find your purpose from your pain. A lot of people who have gone through traumatic relationships or situations often do something that like I'm doing right now. You know, they figure it out and they're like, oh my God, I got to tell the world. And so if that's what your passion is, cool, we'll help you, find a direction to go that way. If your passion is to go somewhere else, that's perfectly fine too. But we dive into how to find your purpose, and then how to ignite your passion to continue to pursue your purpose that you found through the pain. And that's what this whole program is really about, is just helping people move forward despite everything. And while they're still healing. So it's possible. You can do it.
Yeah. And honestly, like, if we're totally honest, everybody's healing. Everybody's on a healing journey. Nobody's perfect, and we're still out here imperfect. I know whenever I started meeting millionaires and working with millionaires, I had them up on this pedestal, like, ooh, they've got it all together. They know. And then when I started working more closely, I'm like, they are like, they're a mess. They're a mess. You know what I mean? And I was like, and people are people at all levels. People are people. So doesn't matter. So thank you so much, Amy, for coming on. And honestly, I just wanted to compliment you too about just your poise and your groundedness. You can really honestly, just you can really feel how solid you are whenever you speak, and it really speaks to your healing as well. So I just want to give you that reflection back also. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And again, if you guys want to hang out with Amy, you can check out her clarity guide or message her and connect with her about her course if that's something that you feel called to do. All right. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you guys next